Denial. The softest, most seductive prison of all. It's not the chains or the walls that keep you trapped. No, it's the illusion of safety. The warm cocoon of lies you wrap yourself in, telling yourself that everything is just fine. Denial is the ultimate comfort zone, a space where reality doesn't dare intrude, where the harshness of the world fades away into the background. It whispers sweet nothings in your ear, convincing you that you're safe, that nothing needs to change, that facing the truth is just a burden you can set aside. And so you do. You stay there, nestled in the silence of avoidance, blind to the storm gathering outside. But denial is a trap disguised as comfort, a drug that dulls the senses, keeps you numb while the world burns around you. In that comfortable fog, you think you're protecting yourself, shielding yourself from the pain, the fear, the truth. But all the while, you're sinking deeper into complacency, into paralysis. Denial lulls you into a false sense of security, making you believe that inaction is a form of protection, when in reality, it's the slowest form of destruction. The walls you built to keep the world out have become your tomb, sealing you off from the very life you claim to preserve. Comfort zones are insidious because they don't look like prisons. They look like safety nets, like a place to rest, to hide from the discomfort of reality. But that's the lie. Denial keeps you there, convincing you that growth, change, risk, those are the enemies. It's not the truth you're running from. It's the pain that comes with acknowledging it. In that denial, you've made a choice, whether you realize it or not. A choice to stay small, to remain stagnant, to wither while pretending you're thriving. It's the coward's way out, dressed up as a form of self-preservation. But there's a cost to that comfort. Denial is not a sanctuary. It's a slow suffocation. Every day spent in denial is a day wasted, a day spent avoiding the very thing that could set you free. The truth is a brutal teacher, but it's the only thing that will break the chains that keep you locked inside your own mind. Denial tells you that stepping out into the unknown, facing the discomfort, will destroy you. But it's the opposite. It's staying in that comfort zone, in that soft haze of ignorance that kills you slowly, silently, from the inside out. And deep down, you know it. You know that denial isn't saving you. It's enslaving you. The longer you stay in that false sense of security, the more you lose time, potential, yourself. You become a shell, existing rather than living, all because you refuse to face what's right in front of you. The longer you cling to that illusion, the more it devours you, feeding off your fear, your avoidance, until there's nothing left but the hollow echo of what could have been. Denial. It's not just a soft prison, it's a loop, an endless cycle that keeps you running in circles, blind to the cracks forming beneath your feet. As long as you deny the state of your life, the gaps, the flaws, the weaknesses, those invisible chains grow tighter. You tell yourself everything's fine, that this is how it's meant to be, that the discomfort is normal, that the weight of it all is just how the world works. But deep down, the cracks are spreading, and as long as you refuse to look at them, you stay stuck, trapped in that endless cycle, never progressing, never evolving, just existing. It's the slowest form of self-sabotage, and the longer you stay blind to it, the deeper you sink into the abyss of mediocrity. To deny is to stall. It's the ultimate act of self-deception, convincing yourself that as long as you don't look too closely, everything will somehow fix itself. But that's not how it works. The gaps, the flaws, they don't just disappear because you refuse to acknowledge them. They grow, they fester, and eventually they consume. Denial is not a shield, it's a blindfold. As long as you wear it, you'll never see the gaps, never find the places where you need to evolve. And without seeing those gaps, you stay stuck in the same loop, repeating the same mistakes, making the same choices, living the same life. It's a fate worse than failure, because at least failure teaches you something. Denial just keeps you stuck. The way out? It's not glamorous, not comfortable, not wrapped in the pretty package society sold you. It's brutal. It's raw. It requires you to rip away the blindfold and stare into the void of your own shortcomings. To accept that you are not where you need to be. To admit that your current state is far from the potential you hold. Most people run from this moment, terrified of what they'll find when the mask of denial comes off. And why wouldn't they? Society has spoon-fed them a script from birth, telling them what to think, what to believe, what to want. But the script is a lie, a trap. If you follow it blindly, you'll end up living someone else's version of life, engineered by the expectations of a world that doesn't care about who you could truly become. For most of your life, the world has told you what to do. Think like this, act like that, pursue these goals, follow that path. You've been handed a blueprint that was never meant for you. It was meant for the masses, for the compliant, for the ones who never question. But what happens if you pause? What happens if for just a moment you stop running on that hamster wheel and start asking why? Why do I believe this? Why am I doing this? Why do I care about the things I care about? Those are the questions denial fears. Those are the questions that crack the foundation of everything you thought was certain. It's hard to break free, because breaking free means tearing down the life you've built on someone else's terms. It means acknowledging that everything you thought you wanted might have been a product of someone else's expectations, someone else's agenda. And that's terrifying, to admit that you've been following a script for so long, that you've been a cog in a machine built by the world around you, rather than by your own design. But without that pause, without that moment of clarity, how can you ever engineer a life you actually want? How can you ever be the architect of your own existence if you're too busy building someone else's vision? Denial is the easy way out. It lets you coast. It lets you survive without ever having to confront the discomfort of growth. But survival isn't enough, not anymore. The life you want to live, the life that's waiting for you, demands more than just survival. It demands that you confront the gaps, the shortcomings, the things that aren't working. And that requires facing reality head on, without flinching, without turning away. It's not enough to accept where you are. You have to see it, point it out, and then tear it apart, so you can rebuild it from the ground up. The ones who never pause, who never question, they stay in the loop forever. But those who take the time to stop, to ask, to confront, the ones who aren't afraid of the hard work of reprogramming their minds, they're the ones who break free. They're the ones who tear away the layers of societal conditioning and start building something real, something authentic. They engineer lives that reflect who they really are, not the version of themselves that was handed to them at birth. And that's the only way out of denial. To stop hiding, to stop pretending, and to face the raw, unfiltered reality of who you are and who you could become if you have the courage to embrace it. The moment you stop denying, stop running from what you are and where you stand, the illusion shatters. But what comes next? What happens after the veil drops and you stand face to face with the mess you've ignored for so long? That's where most falter. Thinking acceptance is the final step. But it's only the beginning. Acceptance alone is hollow if it isn't followed by something darker, something more dangerous: commitment. Without it, you're nothing but a spectator in your own life, watching as days, months, years slip through your fingers wasted. Commitment terrifies most because it demands sacrifice. Once you commit to something, there's no turning back, no safety net to fall into when things get uncomfortable. Commitment means locking yourself into the struggle, staring down the barrel of failure and deciding to pull the trigger anyway. But those who commit to nothing, who dabble, who float through life without purpose, they're the real prisoners, trapped not by circumstance, but by their own indecision, by their refusal to anchor themselves to something real. Without commitment, life becomes an endless stream of distractions. Every fleeting pleasure, every passing thought pulls you in 1,000 different directions until you're stretched so thin that you barely exist at all. To commit to nothing is to be at the mercy of everything. You become a puppet to the whims of the world, blown around by every new trend, every new idea, every new desire. It's a life of shallow pursuits, of temporary fixes that leave you emptier than before. The mind, uncommitted, becomes a breeding ground for chaos. You chase every fleeting thing that promises an escape from the discomfort of doing nothing meaningful. But what you don't realize is that the misery you feel, the hollow ache in your chest, is a direct result of this distraction. It's the consequence of a life lived without direction, without purpose. And that is a fate worse than death. To be alive, yet dead inside, lost in the noise, unable to find the path because you've never committed to walking one. Commitment is the blade that cuts through the noise. It's the thing that gives your life shape, form, meaning. Without it, you're just drifting, waiting for something external to fill the void inside. But nothing outside you will ever fill that emptiness. Not the distractions, not the comforts, not the endless cycle of meaningless pursuits. Only when you commit to something, truly commit, do you begin to understand the power you've been wasting. Misery is a choice, but it's a choice made every day by those who refuse to anchor themselves to something greater than the distractions. It's a slow descent into madness, masked by the fleeting highs of temporary gratification, while the soul starves in the background. The world is filled with those who dabble, who hesitate, who flirt with ideas but never marry any of them. They fear commitment because commitment means discipline, means sacrifice, means facing the discomfort that comes with chasing something real. But those who commit, those who truly give themselves over to something, find a kind of power that is inaccessible to the rest. In a world full of distractions, the committed are the ones who rise. The rest, they remain lost, chasing shadows, forever trying to fill a void that grows deeper with every passing moment of indecision. A person who commits is dangerous, unstoppable. Once you've anchored yourself to something, the distractions fall away. The noise quiets. And in that silence, you find clarity. You find focus. You stop chasing everything and start building something. It doesn't matter what you commit to. An idea, a cause, a path, so long as you commit fully. Because the moment you do, you take control. You stop being a victim of your own life. You become the architect, the designer of your fate. And that's the most dangerous thing of all. The world doesn't want you to commit, because a committed person is beyond manipulation, beyond distraction. You can't control someone who knows exactly where they're going. Those who refuse to commit, those who live in the endless sea of distractions, they are the ones who suffer the most. They think freedom lies in not being tied down, in keeping their options open. But in the end, they become slaves to everything. Every new idea pulls them away from themselves. Every passing trend takes them further from the life they were meant to live. They've traded depth for breadth, meaning for surface-level distractions. And in doing so, they've condemned themselves to a life of quiet misery, a life where nothing is ever truly built, where everything is started but never finished, where every day feels the same because no path was ever truly chosen. So after acceptance comes the hardest step of all, commitment. It's not enough to see where you are. You must decide where you're going, and then you must walk that path relentlessly. Without that, you'll stay stuck, endlessly spinning in circles, distracted by everything, committed to nothing, and haunted by the knowledge that you've wasted what could have been. Change. That terrifying concept that makes most people recoil, clutching desperately to the comforts they've built around themselves. But here's the thing. Intelligence isn't measured by how much you know, how well you memorize facts, or how cleverly you argue. No, the real measure of intelligence is your ability to change, adaptation, evolution. Those are the hallmarks of true intelligence. Because anyone can learn, anyone can regurgitate information, but only a few can face the abyss of transformation and step into it willingly. Most people fear change because it requires them to dismantle everything they've convinced themselves of, everything they've been told to believe. It means tearing apart the very fabric of their identity and rebuilding something stronger, sharper, more dangerous. The weak stay the same. The fools cling to their old ways, their outdated beliefs, terrified that if they let go, they'll be left with nothing. But those who possess true intelligence, the kind that goes beyond books, beyond surface-level knowledge, know that change is the only constant, the only path forward. Stagnation is death. To resist change is to die a slow death, trapped in the prison of your own making, watching as the world moves on without you. Those who adapt, who evolve, they are the ones who survive, who thrive. They shed their old skins like a snake discarding what no longer serves it, and emerge stronger, more resilient, more capable of facing the unknown. Change is not an easy path. It's brutal, like ripping the flesh from your own bones. It demands sacrifice, the death of your old self, the destruction of old patterns, old habits, old comforts. And most people can't handle that kind of self-destruction. They want to stay as they are, to cling to their outdated ways of thinking, because it's easy, it's familiar. But what they don't realize is that staying the same is far more dangerous than change ever could be. To resist change is to let the world pass you by, to become irrelevant, powerless, a relic of the past,